Hi, it's Anna here. Thanks for tuning in. So, there's something I want to discuss, which is what are you waiting for? Because from where I'm sitting, there are way too many people who know actually deep down what they need to be doing, but they're not doing it. They're not moving. They've parked themselves very comfortably, and and they're not budging. They're waiting. And on one hand, I want to address the fact that there are a lot of people who have had some kind of awakening, some awakening to what's happening in the world, and they are drowning into all the rabbit holes, listening to all the knowledge and all the things, right? Which is, I guess it's one part of awakening, so that's fine. But it becomes a problem when you are literally waiting for dates, because this is what's really popular as well and very sensationalist when there's always someone coming up with a date. There's some kind of disclosure that's going to happen at this time or at this time or in that year. And that's the biggest trap. That's the biggest trap. You know what was a massive gift to me when I initially woke up to all of that stuff? I usually always read comments under YouTube videos, and I started actually reading a lot of comments from people. So at the very beginning of my awakening, where they were like saying, I'm now 70 years old. I've been waiting my entire life for disclosure, and I'm still waiting and nothing's happening. And that was the biggest gift. So I'm sharing that to you because we need to learn from other people's mistakes. This is really something we have to do on this path to create that discernment within ourselves. There are a lot of people who have made mistakes, and they are very kind to share and come online and share it, whether it's in a comment or whether it's doing, a testimony videos. And we have to spend the time to listen to it, to not be arrogant, to think we know better and listen to it so we don't have to waste our time and make the same mistakes, right? So waiting for those dates, which is really waiting for an external savior, is not the path. That's not going to happen. And you know why? It's because evolution doesn't happen out there, it happens through you. Regardless of what happens in the world, even if there's like a massive reform at some point, right? You still need to do the work in your life. There's plenty of work to do for you in your life. We all have work to do. So the liberation and the transformation has to happen within you and, within your life, above anything that's happening in the collective. And so that's a huge trap to keep looping. And the problem is this kind of information is extremely addictive. And so you end up in a loop of just constantly being online and looking at all that stuff. And literally, you're not even realizing it, but you're looping in circles. You're not evolving, you're not moving, there's nothing happening. And there's an illusion of something happening because you are absorbing information, right? You are learning and listening and absorbing information. But there's no evolution. Evolution is when there's shifts inside of you that are viscerally felt and inside your own life. And so we shouldn't be waiting to start on the inner work journey because there's plenty of work for us to do. I have a separate video on inner work, but the thing as well is that we don't need to wait for our line in the sand to be crossed, right? A lot of us, and me included, so I have to be honest, only really started the deep inner work when life became unbearable. And we all have a different line in the sand somehow. For me, it was when I had spent 2 years of severe sleep deprivation after having my second child, and my partner started calling me names in front of the kids. Apparently, calling me names before when I had no kids was fine, but that was that line in the sand that was crossed, right? But the thing is, being completely honest, I knew for a long time that I had work to do, that it was not right. And so we need to train ourselves to learn from others and to listen to other people's testimonies, other women who are going through abusive relationship and toxic relationships, and learn from that. Why am I waiting? And instead of waiting for something to become absolutely unbearable so that the change becomes just incredibly difficult, and it feels like a crucible, you can actually start moving the needle little by little. And it doesn't mean that you need to leave that relationship, but at least start doing some work and, move the needle slowly, little by little every day, to do the inner work that's needed to actually make you like fortify yourself, make you understand like what's happening with me, why am I staying, what am I tolerating this stuff. So I'm just using that as an example because that was my example. But there's also plenty of other work that people have to be doing. The amount of people who have told me that they cannot read a book anymore, they cannot concentrate, they cannot listen to a 2-hour video anymore is huge. And so that's also another piece of work that everyone has to be doing, which is retraining our mind to focus and to not be so scattered, to really clear and clean and purify our mind. And that comes with work, right? That comes with taking notes when you're listening to a video or listening to a book. That's how you literally rewire your brain. There is tangible, practical work that has to happen in your life. So it's, you have to pay attention to the sort of stuff that you complain about in your life and start there. You don't have to make the huge moves that feel like such a boulder that it's paralyzing and you can't do. But you should start by doing the smaller incremental steps that take you there. Another example is if your health is not where you want it to be, do something about it. Start eating healthier, start doing some testing to see, to check your gut health, go see an acupuncturist. There is plenty of things that you can be trying and you can be doing to start improving and step on the train of evolution, instead of waiting for things to become unbearable or waiting for something to happen out there. Because that's the thing, right? Nobody's coming to save us, because that's not the point. The point is that we are being asked to fully individuate and to fully step into this mature being that we are actually truly are, who takes full accountability and full responsibility for everything in their life. And of course, everybody's tired. Of course, a lot of people are burnt out. But we are literally burnt out, from putting the effort into the wrong things. And so it will require effort to course correct. But it's actually, paradoxically, the only way to fully regain our health and our energy and our sovereignty and our freedom. Taking responsibility for everything is actually a prerequisite to fully rise into your highest timeline and higher levels of consciousness. I heard someone actually say in a video recently, and he called it the psyop of personal responsibility. And it's actually so powerful. This needs to be on a t-shirt. Because from where I'm sitting, we are being so infantilized and, I don't know, using that as an excuse, or maybe excuse is not the right word, but then the mindset gets shifted into the wrong thing, and it's actually keeping us trapped and keeping us locked and keeping us plateauing instead of evolving. You have to understand that true spirituality is actually taking responsibility. That's the prerequisite. And it's because it works at a frequency level. You are literally shifting your frequency. So this process of healing and purifying, this inner work process, this shadow work process, and doing everything that needs to happen in your life, is what allows you to anchor more and more of your light, more and more of your spirit. And it's actually what shifts your frequency. And so, the higher timeline that you dream of, that you want, is actually on the other side of reaching that frequency. So there's work to do. It happens through you. It has to be done. The higher timeline is not going to magically appear. There's no white knight in shining armor that's going to come and rescue you, which is actually a big wound that I'm seeing working through a lot of women. That's not the path. Unfortunately, I wish it was the path. It's not. This mindset is actually the perfect way to not truly evolve and to stay in either karmic relationships or very comfortable soulmate relationships that don't really make you evolve. So this is what we need to be doing. Stop waiting. I'm not obviously talking about the different times on this path when at times we are recalibrating and there's not much happening, right? I'm not talking about that. There's a very, very different energy between resting and waiting, and you have to become extremely perceptive to be completely honest with yourself and what you're currently doing, and start questioning. Am I just resting and being asked to trust the process at this time, which is a very heavy process of calibration? Or am I actually waiting? And sometimes it's so subtle, it's very easy to lie to ourselves. So I felt really called to make that video because honestly, where I'm sitting, a lot of people have been given the guidance, whether it's through a dream, through a friend, or whether deep down they actually know, and they're not really doing much about it. They're still playing safe, they're still staying comfortable, they're still self-abandoning, and it's unconscious on a certain level, right? That's why it's so sneaky. It's because it's not fully that obvious to us, otherwise we'd be doing something about it. But that's the path, right? We have to train ourselves to feel into these subtle nuances of various impulses and desires and that are not helpful and that are working through us to prevent us from truly rising. Because at the end of the day, yes, there is a spiritual battle that you have to go through because that's part of the path. And there is absolutely a dark force trying to prevent you from progressing. But something that I want to make very clear is that it's up to you. You hold all the power. Nobody can take your power away from you unless you let them. And so you have to fully understand that and put your big girl or boy's pants on and do what needs to be done. That's the path. That's the middle path, the narrow path that Jesus Christ mentioned. That's the path that leads to true vertical progress instead of looping horizontally. And you will have proof that you are making progress because things start to magically shift in your life. It's not always instant, there might be a 6 months delay, but it will be so obvious. And you will look back and think, why did I wait so long? So please know this. Please know that you do not wait for anything. The change happens through you in your life, regardless of what happens out there, regardless of what anybody else is doing. This is your path. This is you versus you. And this is you in co-creation with your higher self and God. And you've got more than enough to start, to make slow progress so that it doesn't become a crisis, it doesn't become unbearable. And you will thank yourself later on, even though it was the hardest thing and you didn't want to do it and it came with a lot of pain. On the other side, you will be so glad you did this. This path is a gift, even though it doesn't feel like it when you're going through it. So I hope this is helpful. I hope it will give you maybe the jolt that you need to actually start actively taking some action in your life and not be so passive and so unconscious and wait for, you know, more guidance from God or more um, reforms out there. You've got more than enough. You can do it, and the change starts with us, each of us. That's where it starts. So I hope this is helpful, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.